Good evening, everyone. It's 5:30 p.m. on Monday, August 24th, 2026. My name is Kelly Lang. I am the Vice President, and I'll be chairing the meeting tonight in Chris Weigert's absence. He is also excused. We are just waiting on Mr. Jenkins to join us, but he will be here shortly. This is a public meeting of the School Board of West Bend Joint School District Number 1. More than 24 hours prior to the meeting, notice of time, place, date, and subject matter of this meeting was posted at the entrance doors of the Education Service Center and on the district's website. It was also sent to the West Bend Community Memorial Library, the Daily News, WRYU, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and other media sources that requested notice of our meetings. I will pause here to ask Superintendent Wimmer to confirm that this meeting was properly posted.
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Please rise and join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Next is approval of the agenda. I would move to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Melanie. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? And motion carries. Next on the agenda is public participation. I have not received any public participation comment cards. And seeing none, we will move on to the next agenda. We've reached the consent agenda. Items include minutes of the August 10th, 2026 regular board meeting, contracts, which there are 14, resignations and retirements, both 0, and then also the Burlington Stores donation. Are there any questions regarding the items on the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Joe. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We have now reached the report section of the agenda. First up is the financial report, and I would like to welcome Lenny Hansen, Assistant Superintendent, who will provide us with the financial report.
Thank you. Good evening. This is actually the final financial report for the 25-26 fiscal year. It's coming about 2 weeks later than usual, and that's by design. We couldn't close the June ledger until every year-end entry was posted and reconciled. So that work is relatively finished now at this point. So what you have in front of you in this report are nearly final figures for the fiscal year, which are pending the audit, as always. So the first thing that you're going to notice in this month's report is that the percentage tables that you see in other months are not in the report, and that is intentional. So those percentage tables and charts are designed to answer one question in any other month, which is, are we spending and collecting revenues at the pace that we should be for this point in the year? But at June 30th, the year is over. So every category has reached its full year total. That comparison on the percentage side no longer really would tell you anything meaningful. The second more important reason is those percentages are measured against the budget that's adopted the previous October, which is built on the estimates made before the year began. Well, the amendment that the board, all of you, approved on July 27th replaces those estimates with what actually happened, one fund at a time. So reporting percentages against a budget that we've already replaced would give you kind of a distorted picture of the year, which is exactly the problem that the amendment exists to solve. So that amendment, if you look back from the 27th, is the more full account, and this report is really just meant to be read alongside of it. As for the year itself, we finished in balance, as I reported at the budget amendment. Expenditures came in within both the original and amended budgets. Property taxes were received as expected, state aid came in as expected, and our grant reimbursements were all finalized as of the end of June, the way they are every year. Our cash flow, which is near the end of the first portion of this report, was very strong. We moved through November to January, that stretch, which is the low point for every school district of Wisconsin. We moved through that without difficulty this year. And our reserves were at a strong level when compared to the prior 5 years. One note on June, salary and benefit costs always really spike in that month because all the summer paychecks for July and August for contracted teaching staff are all recorded in June to meet the way that our auditors and DPI like to have things booked. That's anticipated and budgeted, but it also means that you see a lot more expenses in salaries and benefits in that month of June. What I'd like you to take most from this year is not like a single line item from any chart here, but it's that we ended the year balanced and we put those results toward long-term obligations rather than any new ongoing commitments. So the best example of that is OPEB, the Other Post-Employment Benefits Trust Fund. Those are benefits we've promised our employees after they retire. That obligation sits on our financial statements whether or not we have money set aside to pay for it. So it's important for us to have a good strategy to fund that. The amendment you approved put another $250,000 into that OPEB Fund 73 trust, and that's actually the second year in a row that we've contributed more to that trust than the funding schedule requires, which means we're now more than a year ahead of the original funding schedule that was adopted back in June of 2024 when the program was updated. So staying ahead of that schedule reduces our unfunded portion of the liability, lowers our long-term costs, and it does get noticed by our auditors and by credit rating agencies when they're evaluating the district. Our unassigned general fund balance also remains within the 10 to 20% range set in board policy. We finished the year in balance, funded our obligations, and held within that fund balance policy. So hitting some key goals all along the way. The table on page 4 shows you where every fund landed at year's end. These figures, I do want to note, are unaudited. Our auditing firm, Clifton Larson Allen, is in the middle of their field work right now. In fact, they were on site last week. And as usual, the final audited numbers will come to you in January. So before I move to the next section, are there any questions around that particular section of the report? Great. And Treasurer Pickler and I, we meet monthly as well and go through these things, so he gets his set of eyes on it as well. So, you know, we have a good cadence built in to be reviewing on a regular basis as well with the board and through that means. The second section of the report is just advance notice information. It's not a request for action tonight, but it's talking about where we'll be looking ahead to 2027 dental insurance premiums. So, if you recall, in July, you adopted a percentage cost share approach for our health insurance premiums. That would go into effect for January 1st. And what the administration intends to do is this fall bring you a similar approach for dental insurance and to shift to a percentage cost share strategy. The reason that we propose this for dental insurance is the same as the reasons proposed under health insurance. So under a flat dollar premium, the employee share doesn't move when the cost of the plan moves. And over time, that shrinks that portion of the total, meaning the district is absorbing more each and every year of that increase. And the problem with that is eventually it has to be corrected all at once. And that leads to a larger single year adjustment, which is something we want to avoid. It's hard to explain to employees, and it's tougher for employees to build into a budget. So we're recommending moving to a percentage cost share on dental insurance as well. However, I do want to make one point very clear about this. The percentage that will be recommended by the administration of employer versus employee cost share is going to be the exact same percentage that cost share is in our current year. So it's not going to involve some sort of shifting more of that burden percentage-wise to employees. We're going to stick with the same cost share that we currently have. It'll just kind of lock that percentage in moving forward so that it gradually moves each year as dental rates change. The last section of the report covers our year-end operations. It goes through that our audit's underway, the amendments approved, we're moving to annual meeting season, which we'll be talking about later on this evening, and has a few other key dates. So that summarizes everything that's in this month's report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, Lenny, do you know what the percentage is, the employee share for dental?
I have to take a look. It's it might be slightly a point or two different between single and family. We'll just err on whichever one favors the employee higher, but it's right around that 80% mark. Don't quote me on it, but it's somewhere between that like 76 to 80% mark. And it shifts a little bit every year because, you know, in dental, we only have single and family as the family sizes. So, you know, if the average family size in the plan grows or shrinks, that can change that relationship between it and single, but it's usually around that 76 to 80%.
Okay. And then next question, so as we are moving to this percentage model, I know you have to look at like some claims history. Is that going to be like the prior July through June history that you look at, and then
So
the percentage to that?
So
based on
there's
that?
kind of two different things going on there, right? So there's actually setting what the premium equivalent rates are. So that's what is the total cost of us to provide dental insurance for an employee, right? So that number isn't determined by the district, that's determined by the actuaries that work for the district's insurance broker. So they pull claims going back, they kind of take a number of different snapshots to try and not let 1 month skew it in a weird way. But they pull the claims, they determine what is the premium equivalent amount, and then we take that percentage and divide that between the employee and the district.
Okay.
So we get projections kind of throughout the year, but at a certain point, they just have to say, well, the projection has to become final at a certain point. And generally, they're including at least the prior fiscal year, so that they're getting through June to come to that final number. We'll have those final numbers very shortly. I can tell you that dental insurance claims have been up in general the last few years. We're told a lot of that is kind of catch up on the staffing side in dental offices post-pandemic, as they raised a lot of their hygienist wages and things like that. That's now starting to find its way into these reimbursement rates. So,
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you.
all right, thank you.
Next up is our superintendent's report, and Superintendent Jen Wimmer will provide that report.
So the West Bend School District would like to join the West Bend Police Department in giving our thanks to Diane Brundle for her 57 years as a crossing guard in this district. Diane is retiring after serving countless children and families at various locations around the city, the latest being Green Tree Road and Park Avenue. So thank you, Diane, to your dedicated and dependable service in all kinds of weather, for your positive presence in the lives of so many of our students. We are really grateful for you, so thank you, Diane. Last week, we welcomed our new teachers and professional school staff for 4 days of training, onboarding, getting to know you. They spent time learning about all aspects of our school district, working with mentors, working in their classrooms, meeting coworkers. They took a bus ride around our community. We had lunch catered by Texas Roadhouse at Regner Park Beach House, where they met various city officials. Joe welcomed them on behalf of the board. And thank you to our current staff and mentors who helped plan that to be engaging and welcoming. And then this week, we welcomed all of our staff back. So they've had some time in their rooms, but today was their big day for all of our staff. Tomorrow, we'll kick off together, where we come together as a district, so that's an exciting time. But during this week, they've got lots of meetings and trainings and kind of getting ready to welcome students. And just a reminder that school year begins on Tuesday, September 1st for K-12 students, and Tuesday, September 8th for our early learning students. So welcome back to our staff. We couldn't be more excited for the year ahead. And then Go Right Way, our transportation provider, has implemented a new app called StopBinder to help families get the most accurate information about their students' bus schedules. So Go Right Way is giving families access to this free tool that gives them alerts on the location and timing. And you can also find school bus stop and schedule information. So we'll put out a note to families this week, just reminding of that and where to access that upcoming route information so they know their bus stop locations and times. And that concludes my report.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, we have reached our discussion items, and the first one will welcome back Lenny Hansen, Assistant Superintendent, to provide the 2026-2027 budget overview.
All right, good evening. So before we turn to the annual meeting agenda, in the next item, I want to take about just 5 minutes to put us in kind of a budget frame of mind. So today is just a preview. There's nothing to act on. I'm not asking the board to decide anything. The purpose of tonight is to just reacquaint you with the key variables that are shaping the 2026-27 budget so that our more full conversation that arrives next month will have the context already in place. So just kind of 3 quick orienting points tonight is a preview. The full budget is presented at the annual meeting on September 28th. Our figures all remain preliminary because several of the numbers that actually determine the budget are not released by the state until October. And then final action to approve the final budget is on October 26th. The agenda item that follows this one tonight walks through that sequence in detail, so I'm just going to keep moving right now, and then we can touch more on that later. So many factors play a role in developing the budget. Today, I want to briefly highlight 4 key forces that are shaping the budget and point out that none of these 4 key items are actually within the district's control, but they make a big difference. So first is state equalization aid. That aid is flat across the state for a 3rd consecutive year as approved by the 25-27 state budget. And because of the way the state funding formula works, the district here in West Bend will actually receive less aid than we did last year. So when the state's contribution to the aid pool does not grow, any increase in the cost of operating a school district shifts to property taxes. This is not a phenomenon that is unique to us. It is a situation that is facing actually the majority of school districts in Wisconsin this year. The second item is maybe the most important on this slide, and is the one that is typically least understood outside of this room here. The state sets our revenue limit. That is a ceiling on what we are permitted to collect between state aid and property taxes combined. If the district's costs go up, the district cannot simply decide to bring in more money to cover them. The ceiling is a firm ceiling. That single constraint shapes nearly every decision that follows as we build the budget. Thirdly, I want to talk about special education reimbursement from the state to school districts. This year, it was touted to be 45%. However, we again expect the state to fall well short of that goal. That would underfund our special education needs by several $100,000 once again, just as it did last year. So as is the case, every time the state fails to meet its promise to special education students, the district's general fund steps in and the district absorbs every dollar of that shortfall from state government. Fourth, equalized property value, or just our property value. It rose 7% this year in our district, which works in our favor. This is determined by the market and it's an amount that's certified by the state. The district has no influence on this variable, but it does play a major role in determining the tax levy. So against all of those key factors, there are 2 outcomes that I want to state real clearly. First is that the administration has developed a balanced budget for 26-27. That is not a given in the state of Wisconsin. I think it's worth pointing out. In fact, nearly 40% of school districts across the state ran a deficit in 24-25, which is the most recent year that there's data available. So balancing the budget is a choice that we make and work hard to get to that finish line, and we have done that again for this year. The second key item is that the proposed tax levy would hold our mill rate flat at $6.14. In spite of no additional state aid coming in for multiple years now to offset property taxes, we will still be presenting a 3rd consecutive year with our mill rate at $6.14. So a few things make that possible. Growth in our tax base, with that property value growing up by 7%, helps. We have a debt service strategy that takes advantage of the favorable interest rates that we've already secured and continues to position us to reduce future interest costs. And we have discipline on the expenditure side. We've built the budget to balance rather than trying to dip into reserves to fill any gaps. The state recently released the 24-25 comparative cost data for every district in Wisconsin. So this is data I referenced quite a bit last year, but since there's fresh data, I want to touch on it briefly again. 62% of what the West Bend School District spent in the most recent measured year goes to instruction, whereas in the state average, it's 52%. These are expenses like teacher salaries, textbooks, and other materials that find their way into our classrooms and in our students' hands. That means we are devoting a much larger percentage of our budget to the classroom than you will find in districts across the rest of the state. A percentage alone can be read the wrong way, so I included some other data that help you understand those numbers in some other ways. So we spend $551 more per student on instruction than the average Wisconsin school district. On top of that, we spend over $2,000 less per pupil than is the state average spent per student. Overall, you would say we're putting more money in the classroom, but less overall. Now, we don't control those revenue limits, but I think it does speak to the work that we do here to be efficient with the dollars we have and make them get into the classrooms and into the hands of our students. This slide shows how that happens in a little bit greater detail. So in each of the operational categories listed here, we spend less per student than the average Wisconsin school district. So our administration actually runs 39% below the state average in terms of the percentage of our budget that we dedicate to administration costs. You can also see transportation and operations costs are well below that state average as well. These are areas where we have found efficiency and our savings don't disappear, rather they get redirected back into the classroom. And as we've built the 26-27 budget, these priorities have remained the same. So what comes next? I'm not going to spend too much time here because, again, our next agenda item covers this in detail. But the short version is that you will act on the preliminary tax levy on September 14th, leading into that annual meeting on the 28th. And then again, the final budget and tax levy will get approved here by the board on October 26th. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Sure, I'll throw one out there. I was just thinking about your use of the state average. You know, and averages can sometimes be skewed by, you know, like one, say, a huge district that is very inefficient. So I'd just be, you won't know this off the top of your head, but I'd be curious how we compare to like the median on some of those items.
So I'm not sure that I'd be able to pull median data because DPI releases the data and they only release certain data sets. You and I are scheduled to meet this Wednesday. I can show you the data set that they release that goes with that and maybe lets you dig in a little deeper. And if there's something worth us bringing back and sharing with the whole board and the community, maybe we could look at doing that at the next meeting.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Well, we'll move then into our next discussion, which is agenda and resolutions for the September 28th annual meeting. We'll go over the agenda and resolutions for this year's annual meeting.
All right, still me. So this process looks very similar from year to year, so I'll try to keep this brief. Every K-12 school district in Wisconsin is required by state statute to hold an annual meeting of the electors. This is not a school board meeting. We always like to reiterate that. It's a meeting of the electors of the district, and it's been held in September here for many years running. This year, it's on September 28th, as we talked about. So the evening will follow the same pattern that it has in prior years, which is represented on the agenda here. You can see registration starts at 6. The public budget hearing is at 6:30, and then the annual meeting itself is at 7 o'clock. So you have two agenda items in front of you today for discussion. The first is the proposed agenda, which you're looking at here on the screen, okay? It mirrors the exact same agenda that we've used in past years. And then the second item is the proposed resolution on the tax levy. So an important note on those numbers, so much of what is presented at the annual meeting is still preliminary. So there's a lot of key data points that come in after the annual meeting, and those are needed in order to set that final budget and tax levy, which is why we don't really approve the actual budget until October 26th. So until then, we make some calculated assumptions. We work with Baird, our financial advising partner, on those projections. The resolution the electors consider at the annual meeting is advisory. Ultimately, the school board sets the final budget and the levy, and again, that's scheduled for the 26th. The proposed resolution sets the total levy at just over $57 million. That total includes just over $10 million for referendum debt service, over $800,000 in community services, and then the balance of about $45.5 million for the general fund. So I always want to point out that, as always, that $45 million for the general fund includes dollars for both the public school program as well as the private school choice program. So this year's estimated tax levy for the private school voucher program right now is about $6.9 million, meaning the other $38.7 million would be allocated for the public school tax levy. Under this proposed levy, again, said it before, but the mill rate would remain flat at $6.14 for the third consecutive year. Again, I also want to note that we're receiving updated information related to these data points on a weekly basis, so the exact figures that come to you even in a few weeks on September 14th for approval, they might be different from what is presented today. As in past years, the language of the resolution was developed in consultation with the Wisconsin Association of School Boards to make us confident that it's compliant with statute. We'll bring this resolution and agenda back to you for approval on September 14th. Following that, then the preliminary budget that will be brought at the meeting will be published in the newspaper, along with an advertisement to the community to attend the meeting. And then we'll be ready for everybody on September 28th. So that concludes basically what we're looking ahead to here. It looks very similar to prior years, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Hanson? Okay, we look forward to that meeting in a couple of weeks.
And I do think Mr. Zweigert will be here this year, so you may not have to chair it this year.
I don't know, I really enjoy how efficient she is at running meetings.
Let's get things done. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to future agenda items, which include the board meeting calendar. So upcoming will be a September 8th, 2026 curriculum meeting here at the Education Service Center at 4:30 p.m. September 14th is our next regular board meeting, 5:30 at the Education Center. September 15th will be the Policy Committee meeting at 4 o'clock here at the Education Service Center. And then September 28th will be the budget hearing at 6:30 at the Silver Linings Auditorium at the high school, and followed by the 107th annual meeting of electors at 7 p.m., also at the Silver Lining Auditorium. Are there any items for follow-up or communication? Okay, hearing none, we've reached the end of our planned agenda, and I would move to adjourn this meeting. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.